much, Fire, for that amazing performance. I hope they are not thinking about that generation in social media that forgets about the phone that is on the so it's on WhatsApp or Facebook. As we move on with our program, at this point in time, I'm going to invite to the podium the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Professor Irene Wati, who's going to give us the introductions and outline the conference objectives.
A very good morning to you all. Thank you, Dr. Ian Lovu, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Lita Inyagura, chairpersons of departments, fellow academics, colleagues, our delegates from various universities within Zimbabwe and beyond. I also see among members of the audience my esteemed teacher, Professor Chinyowa. No one forgets a good teacher. He was, a very good teacher, a great model of minds. The Vice Chancellor said, you'll be very pleased to know that among members of the audience, we have a cohort of academics drawn from a wide array of universities beyond our borders. We have delegates coming from the University of Botswana, University of Creative Technology Botswana, University of Malawi, Thai Solarian College of Education, Nigeria, University of Technology, Sydney, Australia, University of Portugal, University of Lisbon, Portugal, University of South Africa, Durban University of Technology, University of Fort Hare, University of KwaZulu-Natal, University of Free State, University of Dar es Salaam, University of Zambia, Great Commission University USA, Binary University of Management and Entrepreneurship Malaysia. Among delegates coming from local universities, we have Great Zimbabwe University, Midlands State University, National University of Science and Technology, Zimbabwe Ezekiel Kuti University, and of course, University of Zimbabwe. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of our corporate partners. I see Ms. Nobuntu representing Total Media. Thank you very much. I'm not quite sure if Mr. Muskia Aurari of Econet is here as yet. Those are our corporate partners. We also have UNICEF Vice Chancellor, as well as the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. The abundance of technological paraphernalia and the concomitant social media revolution has completely redefined the human landscape, especially in terms of how we define and visualize ourselves in our various spaces. Social media has engulfed the continent of Africa in particular, like some kind of a tornado. It has given us new definitions and new interpretations of life. It has also ruptured our understanding of various practices and aspects, and in the process ensuring that human beings behave and operate in a way that is not consistent at all with our understanding of tradition. So in that particular regard, it will be foolhardy and indeed an egregious abandonment and travesty of academic responsibility if we fail to convene and interrogate such a process or such a technological aspect such as social media. Because our understanding of human agency in the era of social media has also been transformed. Where people, for example, on the margins, the subaltern, did not have a voice, we find that today social media has afforded the subaltern a voice. He has given them, some feet on which to stand. He has given them a mouth with which to speak. But it is the kind of language that, social media, for example, is afforded, various categories of society that we must be able to focus on and interrogate. Whether social media has brought about positive transformation in terms of human affairs or negative transformation in terms of human affairs is a question worth exploring. So we are very grateful, Vice Chancellor, to your leadership, which has made possible this kind of a conference, where we are focusing on the impact of technology on society. It's one aspect that we cannot afford to ignore anymore. And so this is the principal reason why this conference is taking place at the University of Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Papa of us, Professor Ainwati, for those introductions and outline of the objectives for this particular conference. In a nutshell, I think what brings us together this morning is to discuss whether in our continent social media is a blessing or a curse. I think as we conclude our conference, such an answer to the question will be provided. As we move on with our program, I will request again our Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Professor Mwati, to come back to the podium so that he introduces the Vice Chancellor, who's going to give us his opening remarks and opening comments. Thank you very much for agreeing to do that, Vice Chancellor. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our heads together as the Vice Chancellor takes the podium to give us his opening remarks.
Good morning. I'm sure people focusing on social media are also able to vocalize words. Good morning. That's much better. The Master of Ceremonies, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, our distinguished keynote speakers. Just met one of the Professor Child here, and others I've not managed to meet. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the University of Zimbabwe. It's always a delight for us to receive distinguished scholars visiting with us here. I think it's important in a number of ways. The first, probably business-related reason is that you become good ambassadors for us. You go away saying, hopefully, good things about the university, what you have seen, and developments that are taking place. You want to go beyond the trust of the conference, learn more about everything, about the university. I think the countries covered is quite impressive. It's an impressive list, and so we want you to feel at home. The focus of this conference is extremely important. It has some academic values. There's social values, as it is social media, economic, values. And it also has, character building, values. We now need to understand the impact of social media on a number of activities that go on within the society. The first thing, of course, has to do with social media and the upholding of the constitutional rights of individuals in our different settings. Is social media above the supreme law of the land? Is social media supposed to observe the rights that are enshrined in a country's constitution with regards to the rights of individuals? Can we just use social media to demonize, individuals, whether there is truth or no truth? And so it becomes very important from an ethics, point of view. Where does social media stand vis-a-vis the issue of, ethics? Are we bound by any ethical considerations when we are propagating, information? Social media and the truth, are we there to peddle falsehoods? Are we there to focus on the truth in the things that, we communicate? This, to me, I think is extremely important. And I'm looking at what some of us do as mathematicians. We try to stick, to mathematical truths rather than falsehoods. And so we would expect, social media under the different disciplines, it might be functioning to do the same. Trying to uphold, the truth in whatever we disseminate, we communicate. But reading newspapers, not just newspapers in Zimbabwe, newspapers from different countries, we tend to see that there is so much acclaimed, freedom by social media to do anything they think is exciting. So is social media governed by excitement, or it is governed by the truth that we need, to communicate? What kind of a society are we able to build or to influence to come into existence? Because social media is very, very powerful. And so we need, in my view, to be able to understand the role of social media in the different facets of, the activities that go on in the society. We have also found out that social media has had a serious impact on the quality of academic business, that is generated within institutions of education. For example, it's quite common to find students sticking to WhatsApp, form of writing, even if they're writing a thesis, a dissertation. Is that the intended, impact of social media? And what does this mean in terms of academic, standards? And so, how is it supposed to interact with, academic, business? This is quite common. When you read examiners' reports, for example, on dissertations and theses, they're always bemoaning, the language that is used by, students. And this is not just undergraduate students, we are talking of even postgraduate students. And so the question is, how is social media supposed to interact with academia? Do we want them to transform the rigorous and stringent academic, demands to suit the goings on in social media? Should people, present their empirical studies in WhatsApp language? And how does that affect the messages that are communicated in such, pieces of work? And so that, to me, also becomes, quite important. Now, social media and character development. But we're not just looking at the written word, isn't it? It can be also through the, videos and, so forth. But these are now the things that you stream. And I want to believe as you are proceeding here, there might be live streaming of what, you will be doing, here. And so, how does this affect the little ones in terms of character building, in terms of the value systems, that they pick up? Should we assume that society is continuously, not even continuing, is continuously changing in order to keep abreast with the dictates of social media? If that be the case, how do we present those elements of culture that are important, the things that we cherish, as, societies? And so that, to me becomes also very important. Social media has more or less created havoc in high schools, for example, in Zimbabwe, where use of vulgar words, vulgar language, has become a common phenomenon. They don't see anything wrong with that. And that is usually accompanied by also bad behavior. And so, and it is viewed by the youth as, something exciting. So they will take, videos of all those things and then put them on social media. Now, what is it that we need to do as people who are, key actors in this, important influential area, as far as, character building, development of, value systems, etc., are concerned? What is it that we're supposed to do? Because they think you can communicate anything as long as it's some form of human activity. I don't think, that is the intended, use and value of, social media. Now, obviously, there are various other areas where social media is supposed to play a key role. For example, mobilizing people for, national development, where you communicate, information that will enlighten people, educate people, inform people of how they're supposed to be involved in national development and how they can benefit from such, developments. And so I think, that becomes, very important. The question really is one of access with respect to the Africa as a continent. How much, of the needs of sharing information, disseminating information exists, within the African continent. Now, there are statistics that are quite contradictory that have been put out. My understanding is that the world population is around 4 billion people. If that is an accurate figure, assuming that every country carries out accurate, census of, its population, then the question is, how many people participate, in one form or another of, the social media vehicles that we have? And what is the rate of access? And what are the parameters that guide access to, such, information? Is the technology that supports, social media now cheap? Is it accessible? And what other things are required as part of the enabling environment for people to participate fully in various social media, activities and vehicles that, we have? I'm not sure about the statistic that 3.2 billion people in the world are involved in social media. I think you need to look at that and see whether that is, true. That it looks, or it appears somewhat exaggerated. If 4 billion is the total population within the global village. And so we need to look, at that, and then try and see how we can assist other people to get involved, in various forms of social media, not all forms, various forms of social media. Obviously, the impact of social media on politics has been probably the greatest, thing, because people are able to disseminate information, mobilize themselves via, social media, share, thoughts and new thinking about what should happen politically through the social media. It ceases to be an issue of people getting together and then talking and agreeing. It means people can actually, disseminate, information and mobilize themselves almost through, some kind of virtual, groups. And things, begin to happen, in that case. So I think on that front, it has had, a very, very important, contribution in trying to mobilize people to share the same thinking, the same ideas, and to agree, on some course of action, to take in order for people to liberate themselves from what they consider to be unfair, treatment and etc. So as you are gathered here, we want to believe that you are going to interrogate, all the different facets of social media and see how they contribute in shaping society, in defining the new attributes of a society, in defining the new global citizens, of the global village. What kinds of citizens are we molding through social media? And what levels of responsibilities are we encouraging to be developed through the various vehicles of social media that we are using? And so as you shall continue with your conference, we hope that you'll be able to enlighten us on the impact and some of the consequences, positive and negative, of social media, and how in particular social media is positively or negatively impacting on academic business that we undertake, and what we need to do to try and distinguish between the new languages that are being developed under the social media different activities, and the more rigorous and accurate and precise language that we require in academic business. And so I want to wish you well and success as you share ideas and as you continue to question various issues that seem to be very important with regard to social media. We cannot run away from it. It is with us. The question is how we can manage it to do the kinds of correct things that we are interested in as societies in the different parts of the world. So I wish you well, and it is my pleasure to declare this conference open. I thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor, for these opening remarks and the challenge that you put up before us as we continue to engage the participants for this particular conference. And I think we have picked even some research gaps that we need to pursue. One of them is to ascertain and really, establish the truthfulness of the assertion in terms of the numbers of people who are actually using social media. I think that's a topic for research. And some of the key issues that he has actually highlighted for us as areas again for further research are issues of the impact of social media on our constitutional rights, particularly the right to our privacy. In so many cases, we have heard people's privacy is invaded through social media, and I think these are issues that we need to explore and discuss further and in detail. The issue of ethics, vis-a-vis social media, ethical conduct and ethical practice, in view of our use of social media. The issue of the truth vis-a-vis social media, where people are peddling lies, where people are, spreading alarming despondence around us through social media. The impact of social media on our social moral fabric as a society. What sort of a generation are we raising as a society that is largely relying on our social media? And again, its positive impact on the wider dissemination that is development oriented in the shortest possible time to, the widest audience possible. And again, its impact on cutting costs as we are, gearing ourselves towards the elections. I think our political parties are going to cut their budgets for rallies, because now you can actually mobilize and canvass for votes through social media without necessarily having to spend resources on bringing people together. Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, for setting the standard and the bar for us as the participants for this particular conference. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our first keynote speaker for the day, Professor Bruce Mtswairo from the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia, with the title Transforming the African Cyberspace, Critiquing the Impact of Social Media-Driven Political and Social Engagements. Prof, I will give you this time to actually give us a keynote presentation. The stage is yours.
Do I still have to use the microphone?
That's a great start. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ndovu, for inviting me to the stage. Of course, I would like to begin by thanking the Dean of Arts, Professor Moati, for inviting me to share my thoughts on the impact, of course, of the ubiquity of social media in Africa. I would like to begin by asking people or academics and everybody in the audience, if there is anyone who doesn't have a social media account, for example, a Facebook account, can you raise your hand? Please.
Doesn't have.
Doesn't have. Doesn't have. Okay. So may I ask, why is it that you don't have one?
I prefer to be anonymous.
You prefer to be anonymous. Okay. Sir, why don't you have one, sir? You just don't want to be on Facebook. There was someone else. Yes, sir.
Well, I like to communicate face to face.
Okay. All right. So you're very traditional in that sense. Okay. Right. Well, we can see now that in this room, there are only 3 people who do not have a Facebook account. That just shows the power, right? Or the ubiquity, if you like, of social media. The fact that social media is among us, and as Professor Nyangura said, it's no longer possible for us to ignore social media. Now, I'm just going to read what I wrote just yesterday in preparing for this talk. Now, the lady sitting next to me as I flew from Amsterdam to Johannesburg 2 weeks ago was so convinced social media has the democratizing ability to transform African dictatorships, to use their words, into overnight democracies. Quote unquote, the days of dictatorships are gone, she told me as I courteously listened. Well, she knew what she was talking about. After all, she had been working as an executive at one of the world's largest NGOs, taking a leading role in financing digital protests in Africa and much of the developing world. The thrust of her argument was social media has the capacity to turn ordinary people into broadcasters and reporters. Quote unquote, we no longer need news organizations, she said. We are making our own news. She said, strengthening her pro-technology deterministic position. She also said without social media, Gambians would have struggled to remove the repressive, to use the words again, regime of Yahya Jammeh. She clearly wasn't stupid, but I didn't entirely agree with her. She never got to know my position because after a near 3-hour lecture, she told me she was going to take a nap, which she did. And by the time she woke up, I was clearly, I wasn't in the mood to listen to a seemingly Eurocentric views on social media, on the social and political impact of social media in Africa. Indeed, the devil is clearly in the details. Social media is increasingly playing a leading role in the mobilization of social and political protests around the world. From Spain to Singapore, Chad to Chile, Mali to Malawi, a new breed of digitally based social initiatives have for years been gathering momentum, undoubtedly in reinventing social, political and human rights activism as campaigners and ordinary citizens alike, eager to empower themselves politically and socially, embrace computers, mobile phones, other web-based devices and technologies to voice their concerns. With activists, mobile monitors, citizen journalists, and digital storytellers based in sub-Saharan Africa joining the fray, and we are told they are cleverly bypassing hegemonic mass media gatekeepers by navigating through the online sphere to inspire collective political and social involvement across the continent. This highly contested discipline of research has attracted more attention than never before. Its capability to transcend borders and physical barriers marks this technology as remarkably powerful. It has spread new ideologies, catalyzed political movements, spread fake news, and connected billions of people. Moreover, it has created asymmetrical communications, allowing the less powerful and influential to communicate widely. In doing this, it has reduced the authority of conventional voices and media. Yet, the impact of the 2010 Arab Spring was predicted to spread to sub-Saharan Africa. But the echoes of sustained revolutions in the Middle East have had limited success in sub-Saharan Africa. Still, from Burkina Faso, where ex-President Blaise Compaoré in 2004 failed to change the constitution, missing out on extending his 27 years in office, to sporadic internet, telephone, and SMS blackouts in a number of African countries, including Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Ethiopia, Uganda, Congo-Brazzaville, where President Denis Nguesso was in 2016 re-elected in office, extending over 30 years in office, albeit a 5-year break. Social media's perceived influence as a political instrument has triggered increasing global debates on its potential towards democratization. Even Ghana, which in 1954 became the first African country to fight the colonial yoke and is normally considered the continent's model for democracy, has not been spared from government clampdowns on social media platforms, equally demonstrating the challenges of digital democracy. When students across South Africa famously took to Twitter in October 2015 to protest against what they considered as exorbitant fees Were they seeking to stage a Twitter revolution or people's revolution? Who should take the credit for the mass use of social media in political protest and mobilization? With citizens seemingly empowered to gather and disseminate information, what is standing in the way of potential revolutions in sub-Saharan Africa? What is thwarting potential revolutions among the ill-fated African urban youths? What evidence of democratization exists within the states engulfed by mass protests in 2010 and beyond? Aren't online-based activists only engaging in what Evgeny Morsov, the Bulgarian scholar, called slacktivism or clicktivism when using social media to invigorate democratic and social change? Also, while social media tools have enabled alternative political voices to flourish, as influential writers and bloggers speak up against political tyranny, realistic and accurate figures on how many are reading and adopting dissident messages are in some cases non-existent. Worse still, the digital divide and digital illiteracy remain rampant in Africa. Despite well-documented issues associated with ICT disparities, and I quote here Norris 2001, Van Dyke 2005, Wilson 2004, Ragneda and Muske 2013. Mobile telephony is growing in Africa, and better still, the rise of smartphones has given to citizens easy access to social networking sites. But, as noted, the digital divide, a multidimensional phenomenon which mostly speaks on one's race, gender, social economic status, geographic location, stands in the way of progress, be it social, political, or economic. While 54 nations in Africa are said to have internet connectivity, according to Jensen 2002, a paltry 10% of the continent's 1.2 billion citizens has access to online activities, even though 70% of sub-Saharan Africa's inhabitants are mobile phone subscribers. The number of households with internet in Africa is pegged at 16% in comparison to the global average of 51%. With the majority of internet sites available in English or in other colonial languages, several Africans are left out in the digital participation, given online activity is limited to those who can read and understand the aforementioned languages. While acknowledging the potential of new media technologies in possibly transforming businesses and education in Africa and perhaps influencing entrepreneurship and economic growth, I'm keen to emphasize that social and economic quagmires such as broadband costs continue to be beyond the reach of most African citizens. Consequently, as demonstrated by Lopez et al. 2017, only 64% of people living in Sahelian region of Africa, which includes countries such as Central African Republic, Chad, Mali, Niger, and Guinea, have a working mobile phone, against 71% in the rest of sub-Saharan Africa and 95% worldwide. Not even the East African nation of Tanzania, which is considered to be home of the cheapest breadth of mobile internet in Africa, with citizens paying US cents 89 for 1 gig, offers affordable access to the net if one considers the fact that, according to UNICEF, Tanzania, a third of Tanzania's population earn less than $1 a day. Well, still, 1 gig is priced at $5.26 and US dollars, not bonds, in South Africa and Nigeria, while Malawi, one of the world's poorest nations, asks citizens to pay $5 US dollars for 1 gig. These figures paint a gloomy outlook for Africa. In fact, access to online technologies remains largely for the elite, which explains why few among us, while eager to embrace, are less keen to on celebrating the so-called digital explosion. But the digital divide is one way of understanding the simmering inequalities that exist, not just in African societies, but also in communities across the globe. For example, only 21% of South Africa's 59.9 million citizens have access to the internet. Data access in the country is more than in Australia, which perhaps explains why, in spite of the overwhelming 3G coverage in most of the urban centers, access to the internet is still limited. South Africa, along with Botswana and Namibia, remain one of the most unequal societies in the world, according to the World Bank 2017, with factors such as one's gender and ethnicity or level of education attained explaining one's social status. Possessing ICTs and accessing the internet is a requirement to bridging the digital divide, but it is not enough to close digital inequalities since they depend on different internet usage. Besides, not all initiatives are a success. Many African universities, for example, have established online-based distance curriculums, highlighting some of the benefits of the ICT revolution. However, several problems, as shown by Alowuchu, the Nigerian scholar, or Achezona and Ugwaini, these are Nigerian names. I hope I'm pronouncing them well. And if there are any Nigerians here, I beg your pardon. From the non-availability of digitalized books to students, and staff to sporadic internet access are commonplace, leaving many questioning the real benefits of ICT revolution. Half of the world's population is now online, with the latest data showing that nearly 250 million new users came online for the first time in 2017. Africa has seen the fastest growth rates, with the number of internet users across the continent increasing by more than 20% year on year. The largest platform, Facebook, YouTube, platforms, I beg your pardon, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram have more than 2 billion for 2 billion for Facebook, 1.5 billion for YouTube, and 800 million for Instagram active users worldwide. Facebook has grown its African user base to 150 million, 94 of whom use mobile phones to access the social network. That is in Africa. One question that we are all grappling with, especially in the work of the Cambridge Analytica and Facebook's data scandal, is the issue of regulation. We may all have read that Ugandan users of WhatsApp, Facebook, Skype, and other social media platforms have, since the beginning of this month, been paying a daily tax, according to a new law which rights activists in the country have said it's a bid to stifle free speech. President Yoweri Museveni wrote to the finance minister in March this year, urging the introduction of tax as a way to deal with consequences of online gossip. You can't blame me. Will other African countries follow suit? What are we going to do here in Zimbabwe? Who should regulate social media platforms? Should this task be given to governments or social media companies themselves? Ultimately, most politicians around the world have realized that pragmatically, it is nearly impossible for governments to regulate the comments, content, and views of over 1 billion people. They have pressured social media platforms to polish their platforms, particularly in relation to stamping out online abuse, pornography, and terrorist groups. To a large extent, social media companies have played along, walking a tightrope between censorship and free speech. African governments should have watched the introduction of the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union with keen interest just a few months ago. The new law gives EU citizens new rights over how their personal data is used by technology companies. If they don't obey the new law, social media companies face up to $20 million fines. Is the African Union thinking of introducing such laws? Surely, if technology companies are willing to respect European Union laws, why should they not abide to potential AU laws? British computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the internet 29 years ago, is in favor of social media regulation, arguing the fact that power is concentrated on very few companies has made it possible to quote-unquote, weaponize the web. These are his words. While I believe there is need for some form of regulation, it mustn't come at the expense of freedom of speech, which here in Zimbabwe has become the backbone and backbone of President Emerson Mnangagwa's government, if you ask me. Some might disagree. And I decide to end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Confrence, for this thought-provoking presentation. I hope he has already again set the mood for this particular conference, and I think we are now challenged and we are ready to engage and debate. Three critical issues are coming out from his presentation. That social media has the power that we are saying it has to actually bring to an end issues of dictatorship in the African continent. The numbers of the users that we are seeing is a true reflection of what is happening on the ground. And finally, who has the responsibility of regulating social media? I think these are the three critical issues that I picked from his presentation. I think we have at least 3 or so minutes of question and discussion. I will just allow 3 questions or comments in the interest of our time. If I can just see those who want to maybe ask or add some comments to this presentation. I'm seeing no one to that side. And the second back and the other one. Okay, so those are the 3 people that are going to take the floor. In that order, is nobody to take your question or comment?
Okay. I just want to add on to what the professor spoke about when it comes to the GDPR policies. So in his presentation, he mentioned how the EU had rolled out new policies with regards to managing data, and then he speaks about how the African Union needs to also implement such type of policies for us within the African continent. Whilst that's a valid point, I want to look at it from another angle. So because we're in a global village now and we're all on social media and we're exchanging all sorts of data online, what the GDPR policy has done is it has awakened the customer, not only in Europe, but everywhere across the world. And whenever you're in Zimbabwe and you're like, maybe let me give a background on what I do. So we do advertising online, and we target you in Zimbabwe, and we basically want to connect you with products that are best suited for your lifestyle. So I'll be on social media looking for people like you. I'll be online everywhere looking for people like you. And an easy example is one of our insurance clients wants to run a campaign right now on Facebook. And Facebook has implemented the GDPR regulations that it's talking about. So whether you're a country that's outside of the European Union, we are now waking up to the fact that it's important that we understand how we're utilizing that data. What does it mean for you as a Zimbabwean right now? What it means is that you need to be now very much self-conscious of the information that you're sharing online, and whatever websites that you're visiting, those websites need to have a policy that adheres to data and how they're using that data right now. As an extension to that, if you follow the internet or Portras, Econet, you'll notice that Econet and Portras have been releasing statements in the last couple of days where they're talking specifically towards your data and what they're doing with it. Portras has said they don't sell data, they don't pass it on. Econet has said the same thing. And then leading up to that as well, one thing that's also very conscious for us right now is the voters' roll and how the voters' roll has been made available to everyone. Essentially, with that voters' roll being available to me as a marketer, what I can do is take that data and upload it onto Facebook. And when I upload it onto Facebook, I'll be able to map, basically match you and what you're doing on Facebook and find you and target you in that regard. So it sounds complicated, but just a key takeout would be for you to become very much aware of what you're doing online. And at the end of the day, I don't think social media is a beast and you should stay away from it. You should be online, that's where we're going, but understand the metrics in which you should be operating.
I think Stephen, I will comment just away from question. The other two are documents. Right there, the date that signs. Thank you, Prof, for your presentation. My question has to do with your framing of your experience with this lady you're sitting with, and how you disagreed with based on this global south, global north arguments that we have, that you call it the Western viewpoint. I work within the area of social media as well. My concern sometimes when technology adoption, access, depending on what you want to call it, happens, particularly within an African context, is how the debate kind of gets lost between I think a conflation of issues between this Eurocentric, Afrocentric model of thinking. And I think we sometimes lower down the arguments and the experiences that we can garner from using social media within our own African context to reducing it to be a Western tool that is there to destabilize governments and you know the whole narrative and charade of what people talk about. How do we move from social media, not just framed as Tim Berners-Lee and the internet revolution, to be a Western tool to actually adopting it? And I want to commend the organizers of the program because I see a lot of presentations on indigenous knowledge systems and how they are being integrated with social media. But at a wider scale, how do we convince our political figures? How do we convince our, and recently I got a text message in South Africa. Somebody said this is the president's WhatsApp account. I'm sure some of you have received that and you'll be interacting with people. But how do we make social media core to our African values without us not just seeing it as a tool that's just there to be repressive and deviant to the cause of the day, particularly within our African states? Then
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation, which was fine, nice, and interesting. Mine is just a small question in terms of figures. You have mentioned a number of exciting figures. I would just want to know the sources of the figures so that we can also go the same way in exploring those figures as you say. Thank you.
So I'll invite you to come in.
Okay. So I'll begin with the last because that's the easiest one. The first one was not a question, it was a comment, and thank you for that. So in terms of sources, there are many sources that I've used for my research, much of which is coming from my own research, conducting research in Africa. I've used World Bank statistics, World Bank statistics. Facebook itself has its own statistics. I've also used statistics from the African Union. So yeah, I think these are really well-regarded, respected, institutions. Of course, you may agree to disagree, but these are official. I've used Twitter, I've used Facebook, I've used Instagram. This is what they say in terms of how much, in terms of penetration of their audiences here in Africa. Is that okay? Okay, thank you very much. Now, the second question is a very interesting one, of course, and much of the way that I look at it, I think, has to do with the fact that I want to look at social media from a decolonizing perspective. I realize, as you say, it is really important for social media to be integrated, or for us to view social media not as a repressive tool, but of course, if you are going to look at the benefits, or if you look at the fact that social media is a Western, or is manufactured or comes from the West, in as much as perhaps we as Africans see the potential benefits, my own argument or my way of analyzing it is as much as it is technology that is really coming from the West, and that is not really that we are only adopting, and that in which we as Africans do not really come up with our own technologies. It will always be something for which we are always going to be dependent on from the West. So indeed, I think that there is need to not just see the tool as a repressive tool, but that was not really my main argument. But what I'm trying to say here is, if you really think about it, about technology as something that is really coming from the Western Hemisphere, the fact that it comes from there, it allows us, or it makes us want to question or critique these technologies, because the way, or if I go back to the lady I was talking to on the plane, she's working for Oxfam. This is an organization that is funding digital activism in Africa. They have not done any empirical evidence or any empirical research. Me and my colleagues, and some of them that are sitting here, Dr. Magwaza are there, Dr. Mpofu there, Professor Viola Milton, and I'm sure there are others that I don't know who are also working on these issues. The issues that I'm discussing here is really coming from the work that is empirical. This lady depends on EU funding, for example, for her own survival. So if she is, she doesn't see anything wrong with coming to Africans and teaching them to say, this is how you use social media, because this is also the way she also gets her money from the European Union, if you know what I'm saying. She needs that continuity in order for her to survive. I personally have never been a big fan of European NGOs, because in my view, they also, we can chat or we can have a drink if you're coming from an NGO. I'm not saying I dislike NGOs totally, but if I look at things from an empirical, or if I look at things from a scientific perspective, I think NGOs are an extension of what our former president used to say, ex-president Robert Mugabe used to say, an extension of colonialism. And I think we need to interrogate that because, of course, these technologies are not ours. You know, why don't we have our own technologies? Why are we dependent, or why are we reliant on technologies that come from the West? Because as long as these technologies are coming from the West, I don't see how they are going to, to represent African values. I think African values and views should be represented by technologies that are coming from Africa. I mean, I've visited China many times, and I'm sure there are people who are here who have visited China. If you're in China, you cannot access a Facebook or on Twitter or any other Western, or Google. There's no Google in China. You probably know that because you did your PhD there. Now, Dr. Laston, so to say. Now, what I'm saying is, of course, people might have different perspectives on how China's, as people say, clamping down on westernization of technologies. I mean, we might differ on that. But I think, most of the Chinese people that I have interacted with, they are saying, we do not want, this so-called westernization, to sort of filter into our cultures. Of course, there's no doubt that China is a dictatorship, right? But at the same time, they also, as a country, have the right to defend their own values, of which sometimes it is very difficult to implement, especially if you are looking at things from a technological deterministic perspective. Because as the Vice Chancellor said earlier on, a lot is happening on social media. I mean, the youth are using or abusing social media, and it's all in the name of freedom. And I'm for freedom. I respect, and I would like for people to have the freedom. But I also really think it is important to preserve and to respect the African cultures. And I think if Facebook is just available, I mean, the main argument that Facebook would say normally gives whenever it is confronted, especially in countries that are not in the United States, is you do not really have the legal jurisdiction to touch on us because we are based in Silicon Valley, California. So it is really hard for the Zimbabwean government to come down on us because we are not in Zimbabwe. I'm sure we all know about Baba Jukwa, and we all know how the police tried to, in their bid in Zimbabwe, in their bid to try and net or find out who was behind the Baba Jukwa website. They tried to engage Facebook, but Facebook was not opening its doors. So my view is, and of course, there are diverse views, but this is my own view, which is supported with my own empirical research, is that I think it is important to have, to allow, or to not allow, censorship, or you need to actually come with a balance. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how you can actually deal with this issue. Like I said, many governments are struggling with it. Because, of course, when you decide to try and stop, or when you introduce regulation, then, of course, those who are from human rights organizations, the Madukus of this world, will be coming after you and will be saying, you are now trampling freedom of speech. So I don't know if I've answered your question. And if you disagree or agree to disagree, let's talk about it later.
Thank you very much, and thanks to those who answer. I'll ask questions and who gave comments. Let's give Prof another round of applause. I think the stimulating debate that ensued after his presentation is testimony of how engaging his presentation was, and I hope that the debate will continue as taken through the conference in the 3 days to come. At this point in time, deal with your permission, should we skip the time and then move on to in the interest of our time? Like the Dean has given me that go ahead. CI, you will be with me in the interest of our time. we are going to go straight into our second presentation by Dr. Chinua, who's from the University of, who's from the Faculty of Arts at the Further University of Technology in Pretoria, South Africa. The title of this presentation is Doing Things Differently, Finding the Synergies Between Social Media Platforms and Applied Theatre Activism. Dr. Chinua, the stage is yours. I will go for you. Okay. Thank you. Right, while they are setting up the PowerPoint presentation, in case there's another burning question, so that we don't just look at each other like that, in case someone the social media will need to interact while they are setting up that PowerPoint presentation. Any burning question or comment to by Prof? Yeah.
Okay, I think this could go to anyone. I'm not so sure about the regulations to help us. Thank you very much. I recently had discovered something that is really atrocious, I should say, whereby anyone can use pornography to whatever extent. And the problem is I have a little boy who is less than 2 years old. And then I was just wondering that if pornography comes into your house, for example, any member of the family or somebody who comes in, and then there's a little one who then is exposed to such pornography. What tools do we have? What could we do to make sure that we can curb this? What parental control could you have? Or is there any platform for us to have such on internet? Or because it's Western like you were presenting, we have no control. I'm really concerned as a mother. Thank you.
Quickly, Dr. Justin, a second or two. Your response.
Thank you. I think this is a very important but also very difficult question to deal with. I think regardless of how you're trying to deal with it, I think it comes down also to the law, the regulation. It depends on where you are. If you are in a country where internet is available, how do you really try to tame how do you tame the accessibility to that internet? It becomes really difficult. I think I'm still not a father, so I've not really had an experience. So I cannot give a good advice on how you can ensure that your kids are safe from pornography. But I think when I look at it as an academic, the only way you are going to deal with it is regulation. Eventually, but I think you have some experience, so I'm going to give you the mic.
Keep it very short, because it appears we are all saying now
just like what the prof said, it's all about regulation. But what can you control in your home? With a 2-year-old, if they have a device, whatever content you have, you need to make sure that it's locked away. And there are apps that you can use to control that. If they're going on YouTube, YouTube has a YouTube for kids. YouTube has banned pornography, banned nude pictures, banned swear words, banned everything. So it's up to you to just go into the app that you're using or whatever and make sure that you've gone through the settings and ban everything that is inappropriate for the child.
Right. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, yes, I need to reciprocate what my star student said, the accolades that he passed on me as being one of his best teachers. That was in the 90s. And it's unfortunate that he's not around to hear what I'm saying. But you know, as a teacher, in any class, there's always that star student whom, if you miss him or her, you really can feel that he's not there. That's what Itai was. So even if I taught him in the 90s, I still remember him very well. I still remember. So he was a shining star as a student. One notable thing about him was I had to have to get a dictionary before I marked his assignment. There's so much diversity in his assignment. All right. Anyway, let me also pay tribute to this institution. It nurtured me. It mentored me. From my first degree to my master's as a staff development fellow until I went to Griffith University for my PhD. I was, sponsored, by this university. So I need to pay tribute. Although I'm now a diasporian, I cannot forget my roots. I cannot forget my roots. So I need to pay tribute to the University of Zimbabwe. Let me go to I've been given strict time to keep within my time. It's unfortunate that the title is not visible, but it's reading Doing Things Differently, Exploring the Synergies Between Applied Theatre Activism and Social Media Platforms. I'm an applied theatre practitioner. That's what I specialize in my doctoral study. And I'm at the same time someone who is I need to make this acknowledgement. I'm someone who regards social media as a necessary evil. I have mixed feelings about social media. Being what I don't know how to describe it, because most of the time you find what comes out of social media is something that you end up being angry about, but at the same time, you need to hear about it. That's how I look at it. But when in my presentation, I'm looking at it as something that is a necessary tool, in the sense that when you are dealing with applied theatre, it has so many shortcomings. Let me go to the introduction so that I don't go off my script. Let's go to the introduction. Yes. Right. Both social media and applied theatre, they have that revolutionizing, the ability to change, to effect change. Change is not an easy thing, neither is it easy to manage. But you find that in the process of doing that change, there are a lot of hazards that are inscribed within the change. A few theatre groups are finding playful ways, that is my emphasis, playful ways of bringing the resources of the digital age into the applied theatre activism. I underline playful. You know, in my doctoral study, I applied play theory. And even now, I'm convinced that, I am fully convinced that the best actor on stage is the child. The child. And no wonder why, what are the so-called digital natives today. If I give my 4-year-old granddaughter my phone, in no time she's into my photos. In no time she's playing some, she's got into all these websites and playing YouTube and so on. And they say, okay, I want to understand this generation better. They are typical digital natives. So you find that playful instinct is the one that we use in applied theatre, and is the one that seems to be playing the space where the social media is also playing. So much is happening in the social media that I would regard as playful. Now, applied theatre is now immersed in different forms on social media, as network theatre,
virtual theater, new media theater, netizen theater, the word netizen coming from citizens of the internet. Citizens that the internet is breeding, it is producing new citizens. So especially young people, they are the targets and can now identify, share their challenges on social media. However, for applied theater, it is bringing in the social media because of its shortcomings. I'll come to those limiting factors that are making applied theater, or that are compelling, or that should compel applied theater to embrace social media. So it has to reposition itself, that is applied theater, within the first stage of digital revolution. And there are implications that I'm going to end up with of applied theater bringing in the social media. Maybe some who are not in the field of applied theater are wondering, what is this? What is this applied theater? The theater that is happening outside the theater buildings, outside the great, what do you call this? The Bight Hall, yes, where should I forget the Bight Hall? You know, in the communities, in Hartford, for instance, it's also happening in hospitals. It is also happening in industry, it's industrial theater. It's easy to tell because it takes the name of the place, the space in which it is happening. Industrial theater, museum theater, process drama in the classroom, all that is under the umbrella of applied theater. And it can be both positive and it can also be negative. I've facilitated applied theater in classrooms where I've left some students crying because the way the workshop was handled maybe was not good for that child. It was sensitive to that child. So it can be both positive and negative, depending on the practitioner. And let's go to the next slide. Oh, okay, that's not how I made it. Technology. Right, I admit that applied theater has registered notable successes. Especially, you know, donor agencies that my friend, my keynote speaker, is not happy about. They actually are quite prepared to fund these community theater groups and so on, because it has the power to mobilize communities. It has, and then make them aware of certain things, certain issues. But a very big one, it remains trapped. There are so many interventions taking place, but if you ask those practitioners, facilitators, how much change have you made? That's why Tim Frenchy and David Kamita, they say, if you ask practitioners how much change they have made, they cannot look into the participants' eyes and claim that they have actually registered much change. What is happening now? Yeah, that's one problem with technology. It can be very uncertain. Okay, so I want to just briefly look at the limiting factors of applied theater and why it should embrace the social media. Why it should do things differently. Let's go to the next slide. Right. I've just called it the pros and cons. The first one is the needs-based approach. I prefer to call it the needs-based model. What happens is outsiders, the so-called facilitators, the so-called development workers from outside, they come into a community and they claim that they know that community better. So they bring in an agenda for that community. There is something lacking already. They've identified somewhere in Norway or in Sweden. I can just a simple example, but outside applied theatre, there have been hospitals that have been built outside in the rural area without consulting the community, and nobody goes to that hospital. Yes, that is something important, but people need to really understand why you're doing that. Why you don't have to just think that the community is deficient. It is in need. It is lacking. So that's one problem with applied theatre. It is a deficient. It operates on this deficit model of the community needs this. Look at the assets in the community and make those assets speak to the people that you are interviewing with. The next shortcoming, the Boalian oppressor versus oppressed divide. Those who have used the theatre of the oppressed, like Prof. Is gone now, but he was one of, I'm proud to hear that he's a professor, Nehemiah Chwandipa. He used the theatre of the oppressed in his PhD. And what you can see is that the forum theatre, when you use it in a community, you are actually focusing more on the oppressed. What is happening to the oppressor? In other words, there is a danger in looking at the world in a kind of a binary way, that there is an oppressor and an oppressed. From my experience, the oppressed can easily become oppressors. I think Zimbabwe is a telling example of how an oppressed can become an oppressor. And if you look at yourself, you have been a family, the men at home giving orders, and then you come to use that. You are a student, right? You are now not giving orders. In other words, there is such a fluid line between the oppressor and the oppressed. And yet, forum theatre wants to emphasize on that division, and they focus on the oppressed. So there's no change, because you are not also changing the oppressor. Right? Then the timing of participation, if there are certain ways which I dislike, are ways like participation, ways like democracy, ways like development, ways like giving a voice. Why? They are so fluid, they mean nothing to me. For instance, if we talk about democracy and look at America as what they call it themselves, a paragon, a model of democracy, I beg to differ. America goes to Iraq and changes regime. They go to South America, any one of those countries, they change regimes. I don't think there's democracy in that. So democracy is a fluid word. It depends on who is talking, where you are standing. It's a relative word. The same with participation. It's participation to the person who has power cannot reasonably talk about making people participate, because that power can actually cause him to impose his interests on the people who are participating. And it's a one-sided participation in that case. So that's why I call it the timing of participation. Then the repressive myths. There's one scholar, Elizabeth Ellsworth, who calls words like dialogue, giving voice, words like agency, words that we, as an applied theatre practitioner myself, there are times when I feel I'm creating dialogue with my students, creating dialogue with my participants. But in the end, I find that it's a monologue. It's me who is forcing them to say what I want to hear from them. So that dialogue becomes a repressive need. It's not dialogue, it's a monologue. I'm sure I'm speaking to many teachers around me inside here. We tend to think that our students we are creating dialogue in a class. It's you, the teacher, who is monologuing with the student. Right, and the fifth, the last one, lack of social responsibility. Or responsibility. When I was writing my doctoral thesis, I remember writing about the Laeza Batanani Theatre for Development workshop in Botswana. Some development workers went into a village, the Bokalaka village in Botswana, and they started doing workshops on cattle theft, right? And the villagers were made to perform, stories on cattle, but those villagers did not own any cattle. They didn't. The cattle that were being stolen were the cattle of those facilitators, the leaders who were doing the facilitation. So, in the end, I was happy to read Rose Kidd, who was one of the facilitators, and Martin Byron, agreeing that the Laeza Batanani workshop was a disaster. It was a failure. They wrote a journal article, and they said, yes, this is a myth. This is an impressive myth. Because you are doing workshops with the villagers on interests that are the interests of the leaders and not the interests of the villagers. There is no social responsibility. You are not responding to the needs of the villagers. So you need to have that social responsibility when you are a facilitator. So I'm identifying so many gaps, shortcomings, challenges that applied theatre practitioners are facing. And I hope those practitioners who are present can really agree with me that there is something wrong. Let's go to the next slide. Now, there are so many synergies now between the social media platform and applied theatre, right? That the social media has its own dramatic properties. You find one person can encode certain images on social media. I think we are doing a lot of that in WhatsApp. Somebody posts a clip, somebody posts an image, and in a group, so many people are responding to that image. That in itself is a playful way. We are playing with that particular image. And that is equal, it's similar to what happens in applied theatre. Only that in applied theatre is something like you have human bodies who are interacting. But here it's in the virtual space. But how things happen is more or less the same. There is the kind of a playfulness. If you look at my last bullet, what Boal, the pioneer of forum theatre said, the images of reality, the images that we are putting on social media, the images that we are creating as stories in applied theatre can be translated into the reality of the images. In other words, those images can easily be transferred from that fictional space, that dramatic elsewhere, into reality. There's something you can take out of the story and apply it in your own life. That is the reality of the image. So those are the synergies that are happening, that the social media is using certain dramatic properties. From just a layman's point of view, because I'm one of those people, like I said, who is very, very suspicious of the social media. But what I realize is even adults who usually think they are no longer, in the age, at the age of playing, they are being made to play on social media now, whether they like it or not. they have to play on social media because it demands that you do that. You have to watch the video and respond to the video. So I usually argue with my students to say that, adults are grown-up children. Even if we deny that, but there is a certain time when you find yourself, thinking about your childhood, and you're having to try to go down memory lane and try to see if you can still do what you used to do. Although it might not be possible because of, the the bonds are no longer as flexible as they used to be. Right. Now, selected case studies, I will brush over those ones to say there is a theatre company in the UK, CMT Theatre Company, and they've been they started as a theatre and education in schools, colleges, but now they're engaging with communities globally. They engage with the Kenya, Child Peace Kenya, an NGO there. They engaged with in New York with a special with youth with learning disabilities. That kind of CNT pioneered that network in theatre, and are making use of it in an effective way. Let's go to the next case study. I want to spend more time on the implications. There is one in Nigeria that is a doctoral study by Okeke, who was working with youth, a youth project where he was trying to see how foreign theatre techniques can be applied in social media platforms. Using these various social media platforms, YouTube, whatever. And he found that the Nigerian youth are normally vulnerable to a lot of violent militant groups. They are vulnerable to religious extremists, cultist groups, and what have you. And the social media made them try and influence each other against that vulnerability with militant groups. So that was and he called it virtual theatre. Let's go to the implications. I think I'm doing well on time. Is that good? Job. Then next slide, which is my last one. My last one. Okay, let me finish off by saying that the social media applied theatre practitioners are finding those who have been bold enough to tear into the social media, who are not afraid of the new. They found the social media as a new resource, a new platform to engage with communities, especially the youth are not easy. They are not easy to mobilize, and the social media is doing that. Also, as a digital technology, users are now able to exercise their own agency. They have control over what they are creating. They have agency. They have that power. And also, instead of just consumers of digital technology, like I think what most of us are doing, what the keynote speaker, a question that I forgot to ask you, that we are mostly just consumers of technology and not makers or creators. And that's when social media gets into the applied theatre platform, people have to create their own ideas. They have to create, to convince each other that no, let's go this route, like the Nigerian. So the shift from consumers to makers of knowledge places the learning at the center rather than the technology, which is what is happening. I think most of us are now victims of technology. I was passing through at Kurima House the other day, and I think out of 10 people, 9 of them were looking at their phones. Even right now, I think as we do this conference, the majority of us are busy looking, tweeting, sending WhatsApp, not bad in itself, but we have become victims instead of the creators or consumers, the makers of the knowledge that we consume. So in applied, the participation moves beyond instrumental usage. That you are using participation in order to manipulate people. but it becomes interactivity rather than manipulation. And that the social media culture, I've already talked about the necessary evil, it's now a necessary tool. And the netizens, the new citizens, as they spend more time on social media, they begin to understand who they are, what they want to be, but in a meaningful way. If you are creating, if you are making, that you are producing the knowledge that is going to be shared with someone instead of just consuming. So I would like to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, to say, I think with the applied theatre, in spite of all the disadvantages of social media, it has come as a missing link, as a necessary tool for the applied theatre activism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chinyowa, for this insightful presentation. I think it's opening up more avenues in terms of, courses, in terms of the content that we'll be teaching theatre vis-a-vis social media, and it's actually pointing to this direction that applied theatre gives us agents, on social media rather than just being consumers. We are able to create information and content that goes to social media. At this point in time, this is what I think there's something to whisper to my ear. I'm just being alerted here that if Mr. Karet Nyamunga from UNICEF is around, we'll allow him to present these presentations before we break for tea. Mr. Karet, are you around? It appears Mr. Karet is not yet here, so then this creates time for us to then briefly, deliberate on the recent presentation by Dr. Chinyowa. Any reactions and responses to his presentation before we break for tea? 3 quick comments before we break for tea. I know we have overstayed our time, but I think we can allow one comment there. Another person, I'm inviting only 3, or we only have 1. Right, you can go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, presenter. I enjoyed the session very well. I want to just react to the last question about are we creators of knowledge or just consumers? I think to an extent, people are becoming very creative and innovative on social media. Through the video they send, and I think some people are almost earning a living through what they're doing. I think I can give an example of Babaten's and so on, right? I think people, they're saying we can make a living, right, out of this thing. And so they're creating knowledge. And as a result, we send, they go viral and people enjoy that and so on. So I think to an extent, people are not just becoming consumers, they are making efforts in the beginning of creative and creative. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, my response is I do agree. And I would like to quote you and say you have used the word to a certain extent. Okay, to a certain extent. So I was talking about the majority of us, we are busy consuming. The majority of us, including myself, I can't remember what, if there's anything I've created on social, apart from my thesis, which is online and so on. So I agree with you. I agree with you. So my argument is that if we, with the majority of us, can be creators, can be makers of knowledge, the better. Yes, thank you.
It appears we still have a bit of time because we're expecting Mr. Courage to give a presentation. Those who are sitting at tea are not yet ready to stay. So this creates more time. I think there were many questions and maybe comments given for the previous presentation. I think we can, engage in dialogue. Prophet actually invited us for drinks. If we have any further, comments with regards to his presentation, I think we can take advantage of this particular time. Any comments, questions? Yes, my sister there. And then the two of the gentlemen right here at the front.
Okay, thank you. I think we as human beings have power over social media. We can choose what we want to see on social media, what we want to see, right? So we can use social media as a platform to advertise ourselves, to make money out of social media. Thank you.
Right. That's a comment. I think that relates to how we can make the best use of social media to actually empower ourselves one or the other, particularly economically.
This one is to Professor Chinho. There's an interesting point that you make, or several points that you make about the concept of participation, democracy, and agency, and the sort of issues that you have around those concepts. My question is, when you transpose the concept of participation in particular to the social media platforms, in relation to what you're talking about, which is theatre or applied theatre, do you see a transformation of those concepts, or do you have sort of a revised conception of the notion of participation, even democracy and agency, when you look at these concepts specifically within the context of social media and digital media platforms?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think when I came to the implications, one of the bullets was that the social media is characterized by one core principle, and that is interaction. I actually call it interactivity. People interact. The sense of interaction it brings in the equation to the idea of participation. Because what happens with participation is there's a facilitator who might have power over the participants. That power alone leads to so many problems of the facilitator imposing his or her interest on the participants. But with the social media, you find that people tend to interact on equal terms. So that's I think that's the answer. That change is coming in the sense of sharing, equal engagement, interaction, which the social media platform seems to have brought in. In fact, one scholar that I read when I was writing my paper described that interactivity as the core element of the social media platform. I think that's, I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yes, in fact you have, yeah.
Thank you, Prof. And I would also want to take advantage of this opportunity to also comment in relation to what our Prof said in terms of how many people are having access to social media, especially given the language that is being used in the digital space. There is very limited use of African languages in that particular space, and it's really a cause for concern. I think as departments of African languages, partnering with those in computer science, we can actually do something to actually make sure that our languages find their way into the space so that we increase participation of those who cannot participate in English. And it's very true. We certainly need to look into those statistics that have been given in terms of how many people are using those platforms, because they're not accessible in the language that the majority understand. And I think it's a challenge to us as people in the departments of African languages, just Institute in languages. We have a job, before us that we certainly need to make sure that our languages find their way into the digital space. Any other comments or questions? Since you had posed the question earlier on, and I expected those who are mothers and fathers in terms of how we can assist a young mother. How can we assist Usiti with the question that she posed? I think that's a question that we didn't really engage on much. Any comments and reactions to what Usiti asked earlier on?
I teach popular culture, and one of my favorite topics is the link between porn and pop. We need to rethink what we call porn, because it's no longer that stuff we watch in our bedrooms or in the basement, or we hide under the mattress. Porn is in everyday life. For example, you can block your child from visiting porn sites, but they cannot avoid encountering porn in everyday life. For example, when we talk about your child looking beautiful and sexy, that's porn, but it's subtle. This other day I was watching a DSTV advert, and there was this guy who was asking the agent, which bouquet should I choose? And then a woman entered, and the agent said, the full package. That's all. So, this 21st century culture is born by, and it's really difficult to hide porn from children. Even cartoons. There are certain cartoons that really look sexy. And children actually know that this cartoon is sexy. But they don't hide. I don't know how we're going to hide, but it's really difficult. It's complex. Thank you.
I think it's an issue that you really need to engage, on, because the person you are talking about social media and the moral fabric of the society, the moral compass of the society. What are your responses and reactions to what Uchidora has just said as well just now? Those who are parents in particular, help us as future parents. And then there's the break there. And Dr. Perry after the 10-minute break.
Just to respond to Dr. Shidora, I think the boundaries and the horizons of what we term pornography continue to be stretched beyond perhaps what this generation or the previous generation termed pornography. So I think there's a way, like he has said, we need to reevaluate that and say, really, what is pornography? 20 years ago, what we see people dressed like here at this university was unthinkable. Totally unthinkable. But then if you're going to use that standard of 20 years ago to define perhaps morality or what is decent dressing, then we are missing it. So I think there's a need for us to redefine, because the horizons continue to be stretched beyond where we are now.
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Shidora. There are instances of subtle pornography in everyday life. If you listen to the song Amai Mabanaka, but what she is referring is that black pornography, where you see real naked women. That's the way.
Any other comments? We are here at the front.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the new data protection law in Europe and what African leaders can do about it. The thing is, African leaders are not concerned about, generally speaking, about the rights of the people. They are only interested if the people are threatening their power. For instance, Mark Zuckerberg can go to America and go to the Senate in the US, Congress, and account for what is happening. But he cannot do that in an African country. Because the African leaders at the age level, fail to make these companies respect African people and respect African jurisdictions. So the desirable position is for the African Union itself to dialogue with these companies and actually have an agreement. Recently, I was talking to the Deputy Commissioner of Police in Botswana. Somebody was communicating with me on Facebook and claiming to be the president of the country. And then when he started asking me, where do you work? How old are you? I was surprised because the president knows me and he knows where I work. So that was the first clue that this guy is not the president. Then the second thing was his broken English. And I could tell his writings from somewhere in West Africa. I'm not saying that. They probably in West Africa when people speak broken English. But that gave him away. I thought maybe this guy maybe is in Gambia or in Ivory Coast or somewhere. And then when I was speaking to the Deputy Commissioner of Police, he said to me, you know, it's difficult to, I was saying, I think we need to unmask this guy. And you were saying to me, but Facebook is not cooperative. I didn't get it because when I was coming here, I didn't get a chance to really have dialogue with you to understand what is happening. But basically, the point that I'm making is that, you know, these data companies need to account in Africa because from a legal perspective, it is difficult. You know, identification or disclosure of data is very important in law. So if there's any prosecution that is to take place, the full identity of the person behind that account is needed. Otherwise, the case is dead from the beginning. And then the other thing is that, you know, there is need for African governments to come up with data protection laws in order to be able to deal with some of these issues that emanate from Facebook. We need to have our own laws. I don't know how many African governments have got data protection laws. We just want to regulate. We want to penalize people, but we don't want to protect the rights of people. I think that is the big problem in Africa. I was just looking at some of the social media laws. I was looking at the new law that we have in Botswana. You can see that there's very little understanding of just the drafting of a statute to protect rights. You find just like most laws that we have in the African continent, like this catch-all criminal laws, they are broadly couched, and there's no balance to protect rights. Like they criminalize all speech on social media, but there ought to be a balance. When you look at comparative international law, you realize that there is a test that has to be applied. There has to be a measure of freedom that is allowed. You don't just criminalize every species that you find online because you think it's offensive. But anyway, those are things that I deal with in detail in the paper that I'm going to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof, do you have any reactions to this comment? Because I think this is coming from your earlier presentation. Any comments or this?
No, I just think I agree with them.
Like recently, Zimbabwe, I think we are using history site for something. It's wondering what to say. Any other comments? Doc.
Yes, I feel compelled to comment on Dr. Chidora's philosophy on pornography. I'm thinking of this kind of Africanization debate and so on and so on. Each people have their own frames of reference. You know, their own values and sensibilities. And when a certain value comes from outside and it is something that has just been taken up by the people, we just can't call it, you know, we can't do about it, anything about it. It's a value that we need to test. I think let's get to a point where if it's something Western, I would really want a situation where we take a Western value on our own, in our own terms. You know, otherwise we lose any kind of images in African, you know. I'm not buying anything outside, but I believe that if I look at our tradition, you know, I am
really find it difficult to see what we would call pornography, because they believe that we need, even to a point of not addressing someone by their first names, addressing them in a respectable, in a room, to kind of a paradigm. So I think pornography, it comes as a borrowed value and so on. We just can't say we can't help it because it's happening. You know, I think that's the way I'm seeing how he takes it. That is happening there in the companies, in the taxis, and you know, even if you want it or don't want it, it's happening. Yes, it's happening. But in terms of your own cultural friends or reference, how do you take it? I don't know. I need to engage with you on that one.
There is an immediate comment and response, and then you also respond.
Thank you very much. I think I want, it's not a confrontation, but I think I want to remind the presenter. Let me just say, in African culture, I can give you an example in Zimbabwe. Most of our traditional dances, they're suggestive pornography. I'll give you an example, Jerusalem. We can think of any dance, they're very suggestive. So to say in our culture, we are pure African, but all our dances, they're very suggestive pornography, pure pornography.
Like that's another one thing they don't want to respond. And then they
all right. Then initially, my point was to try and find out from those that have researched profoundly in this area, to find out ways in which, as a nation, we can try to avoid certain excesses in social media. Because I was surprised, because I'm quite a novice in this stage of this whole social media. I do engage, but not to the extent that some do. So I was surprised at the level to which any Zimbabwean can delve into hardcore pornography. I did not know that it was possible. So that's what then surprised me. And I'm just thinking, a friend of mine from China said they are some sites they are not able to open. I don't know how far they go in China. But then this is like, these are controls. They then help me as a mother. This is how I'm thinking. Because as a mother, I cannot control every person who's coming close to my child. But then if the country has controls as to the extent to which you can go in terms of pornography, that is, then it means my son is protected to a certain extent. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the national legal control. I'm not talking about what I could do on different sites. I could do that, but then there are people around these children. So what are we doing as parents? What are we thinking about legally in terms of how far people can go in exposing our own children? This is what I'm talking about, legally.
So the question is, how can we police what our children get?
Yes.
Like as adults, recently following the bombing in Bulawayo, I saw a clip. I think it's one of the actors. She was calling, looking for a place that manufactures bombs. I was not even interested in that video, but it came my way because I'm in a particular platform. How do I say no to such? How do I block? How do I actually say I don't want to receive this kind of information? I saw another hand right at the back. Doc, you want to respond? Can we give Doc the mic?
Yes, please. Yes.
I want to respond to my friend who says traditional dances are pornographic. I'm happy to be one of those who have also said they went according to the context. If it's mainly, it's supposed to be played in a context that is to do with love. Muchoko in a context that is to do with war. Jerusalem in a context that is to do with, I don't remember what, that is what is a correct one. So you can, and in those contexts you find that the kids were excluded in the context of rainmaking, and his own dance, and the dance, it was meant for fertility. Then there was this gyrating of the hips and so on, because it speaks to fertility. You know, those dances were done within context. If we take away context, then I would say, yes, you are now taking the weddings, you know. You are now taking Muchongo to weddings, just entertain people. But they were played in context at that time that were relevant for those dances.
Like I'm aware of the Jerusalem Festival, and it's happening. All of us are invited to watch that particular ceremony, so we're all exposed to pornography. It's not enough time. Sidora and then crop this time. Oh, then the gentleman right there in the back kept me on board for too long. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My concern is one, and I share your sentiments. There's a concept called disruptive business. And the concept of a disruptive business is really our traditional 8 to 5 jobs are not going to get us the money that we need. And if you look at much of the businesses that are doing well, are your internet-based businesses. And talk of Airbnb, you can talk of Uber, and there's a particular porn site, I won't mention the site out of respect, but they released some statistics around how quick it was for innovations to get to probably 1 million users. And whereas some products that we consume are getting 15 years, 20 years, this particular site got to about within a couple of, a year or so, it has amassed a multiple numbers. Now, where I'm going with this, it's also to then disrupt things, to actually say our kids are growing up in that era of the disruptive business world. Now, we may do everything to police the internet, to stop them from viewing certain sites, stop them from doing it, but one of the most important research angles we should look at through your chair is the role of disruption and technology usage, particularly with cultural values. Culture, some of you would know, is dynamic. There are things that move. And like interesting take to say traditional dances in themselves could be deemed pornographic is an element of what the conversations we need to start having around this necessity for disruption. My final point has to do with these gross generalizations about in Africa, this happens, in Africa, the African leaders, we reduce African leaders to a few case examples of people who have had misdemeanors themselves, who have done things. We reduce African corporations to companies that have been found on the wrong side. My plea to us as fellow Africans is we need to get more exciting stories about African leaders, African businesses that are doing great things with the internet, for the sake of this generation of that lady who's mentioned about their kids. Because all we hear about African leaders is bad things. All we hear, the popular narrative around African corporations or African laws are not, they are exciting stories that are happening out there. And we as academics, as an academic myself, seem to be so prefixed with the problems, rather than also celebrating some of the great success stories that are happening in the era of business.
Thank you very much. And try to that again, the question of rights as well. You know, if you then try and punish your child that way, the child will say, I also infringe on my right to privacy, my right to access to information. So it's really a delicate and complicated kind of a story. There's a gentleman right at the back as well. I think he will be our last speaker because I'm told our tea is ready. Or Tanaka will be the last one.
Okay, pointing to what you were saying, I guess we not really need to define pornography based on the context. Because, let's take for instance, we might have a scenario where we can have, we can find pornography in it, yet with their own context, maybe which they are trying to bring out, yet maybe we might see it as pornography. Probably maybe trying to bring out something. So what I'm saying maybe is we do not really need to define pornography based on context. Likewise, let's say for instance, long bag. People used to cover just the bag, their bags and front. One might see it as pornography. Yet we are saying we are looking at it on our own context. So it's really difficult to define pornography.
So they are just complexities against. So there are last contribution for this session.
It's really easy to talk about our culture, but in this 21st century, we cannot understand it in an abstract sense. Culture is how we live every day now, and how we live every day and now changes all the time. I'll give you an example of Jonathan Morris in famous 100% local content, but there was nothing local about the music that was produced by the artists who benefited from that policy. Many of the readings were actually remixes of American R&B, Jamaican dancehall, South African kwaito. It was a melting pot. It was some hybridized kind of music. So for me, virtual spaces are actually allowing people to look for modalities of action elsewhere, away from the physical space on which we speak of our culture. So I don't know if we can go back, but I don't know to where.
So we have our culture. That's the question that Shidora is completing our session with. This then brings us to the end of our session for this particular morning. I really want to thank you for this fruitful engagement that you have had so far. What you are going to do now, we are going to break for tea, and we are going to break in this particular order. We will allow our keynote speakers, our delegates to be the first to be served, and then our students will be the last to get our tea. As is below, going back to our culture, we must all that first. And then soon after our tea, we are going to then break our way into our panel sessions, which are clearly indicated in our program. So please try and find the way to the panel sessions venues, which are almost close to the place where tea is going to be served. If you have any challenges, our ushers are right at the back there. They will assist you find where you are supposed to go and present. Thank you so much, and wish you a fruitful discussions from here.